The car died in the middle of Maple Street, right under a blinking traffic light, with horns already starting to sound behind it. Emma Harper felt her chest tighten as she turned the key again. Nothing. Just a dry click that echoed her own frustration. This was exactly how her life felt, lately stuck in the wrong place at the wrong time, with no clear way forward. She stepped out of the car, cold evening air brushing her face. The town looked the same as it had years ago. Neat houses, trimmed lawns, and streets that remembered everyone's past. Coming back here after 12 years hadn't been part of her plan. Neither had the quiet divorce that ended her marriage without shouting or drama. Just silence and exhaustion. She had told herself this move was temporary. Now, standing under that traffic light, she wasn't so sure. A pickup truck slowed and pulled over behind her. Emma's shoulders tensed for a moment, then relaxed when a man stepped out, calm and unhurried. He wasn't flashy or loud. He moved like someone who had learned patience the hard way. "Looks like you could use a hand," he said, voice steady and kind. Emma nodded, unsure why she suddenly felt embarrassed. The car just stopped. "I'm Daniel," he said. "I live nearby. Mind if I take a look?" She hesitated only briefly, then stepped aside. Something about him felt safe, like a neighbor you hadn't met yet but somehow trusted. Daniel opened the hood and leaned in, studying the engine with quiet focus. Emma watched him work, noticing the small details, the way he rolled up his sleeves, the way he didn't rush or complain. Traffic moved again. The noise faded. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them and the soft hum of the evening. "You don't sound like you're from around here," Daniel said without looking up. "I grew up here," Emma replied. "Left after college. Just moved back." "Welcome home," he said simply. The word landed heavier than she expected. Home? She hadn't known what that meant anymore. The house she lived in now still smelled like old paint and boxes. Her old life felt like something she had borrowed and returned. Daniel adjusted something under the hood, then closed it gently. "Try now." Emma slid back into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine started smoothly, like nothing had ever been wrong. She laughed before she could stop herself, the sound surprising them both. "It works," she said, relief flooding her voice. "Simple fix," Daniel replied. "Loose connection." She stepped out again. "Thank you. Really," he shrugged, almost shy. "Glad I was driving by." They stood there for a moment longer than necessary. Emma noticed the faint lines near his eyes, signs of someone who had lived through more than he talked about. She wondered what his story was, then caught herself. She hadn't planned on caring about strangers again. As Daniel walked back to his truck, Emma felt something unfamiliar tug at her chest. It wasn't attraction. Not exactly. It was recognition, like seeing a steady light after weeks of fog. She drove home thinking the moment would fade by morning. It didn't. Over the next few days, Emma settled into her routine. Work at the local insurance office kept her busy. Evenings were quiet, sometimes too quiet. She told herself she liked the peace. Still, her thoughts kept drifting back to Maple Street and the man who had stopped when he didn't have to. A week later, her car made a sharp rattling sound in the grocery store parking lot. Emma closed her eyes, half laughing, half annoyed. She pulled out her phone, stared at the screen, then surprised herself by driving instead toward Maple Street. Daniel was outside his house, fixing a fence. He looked up as she pulled over, recognition lighting his face. "Let me guess," he said. "The car again." Emma smiled despite herself. "It has bad timing." He wiped his hands and came over without hesitation. This time the fix took longer, but Daniel stayed calm, explaining what he was doing in simple words. Emma listened, though she realized she was paying more attention to his voice than the engine. "You're patient," she said. "Had to learn it," he replied. That answer stayed with her. As days turned into weeks, their meetings stopped being accidents. Sometimes Daniel checked her car. Sometimes they talked on the sidewalk. Conversations were short at first, then slowly grew longer. No heavy flirting. No promises. Just shared moments that felt honest. Emma learned Daniel worked as a contractor and kept busy fixing things for others. He learned Emma liked early morning walks and hated loud places. They talked about books, about how small towns change and stay the same. Neither rushed to talk about the past. One evening, sitting on her porch steps, Emma finally said, "I didn't expect to come back here." Daniel nodded. Most people don't. She almost told him about her marriage, about how two good people could still grow apart. But the words stayed inside. Some truths needed the right moment. That night, after Daniel left, Emma realized something else. She wasn't counting days anymore. She wasn't waiting to leave. For the first time since the divorce, her chest didn't feel tight when she thought about tomorrow. The car breaking down had felt like the end of something. But now Emma wondered if it had been the beginning instead. And she had no idea how much that first stop on Maple Street was about to change her life. The car wouldn't start again. Emma's fingers tightened around the steering wheel as the engine coughed and died in the parking lot of the small grocery store. She groaned, a mix of frustration and disbelief. It was like her life kept sending reminders that nothing moved smoothly, not her work, not her apartment, and certainly not her heart. But then, as if on cue, headlights cut through the late afternoon haze. And Daniel's pickup rolled to a stop beside her. "You again?" She called with a half smile, trying to mask how relieved she felt. "Guess it missed me," he said, stepping out. His calm presence was like an anchor in a storm. Emma laughed softly, shaking her head. She had no idea how a man she barely knew could already feel so familiar. Daniel leaned over the hood, flashlight in hand, inspecting the engine with careful attention. She watched him, noting how every motion seemed effortless, how his focus never wavered. There was a rhythm to the way he worked, like he had repaired broken things 100 times before. And yet, every time he approached it with the same care, "You've got a small leak in the fuel line," said finally, his voice steady. "Nothing serious, just needs a clamp." "I'll fix it," Emma nodded, feeling a strange mix of gratitude and curiosity. She didn't often let people get close anymore, not since her marriage ended. But Daniel had a way of being near without pressing, of speaking without demanding. Watching him work, she realized she wasn't thinking about her loneliness for the first time in months, while he fixed the car. The conversation began naturally. Small talk at first about the weather, about the town, about the kind of gas station they were parked near. Then, slowly, the topics grew deeper without either of them forcing it. Daniel shared how he had lost his wife years ago, quietly, without bitterness, and how he had learned to move on without losing his sense of kindness. Emma listened, intrigued by his calm honesty. She shared pieces of her own story about the marriage that ended not with fire, but with quiet fading, about the choice to return to her hometown, about how sometimes life didn't make sense. Daniel didn't judge. He didn't tee off her cliches or platitudes. He simply listened. And that listening was something Emma hadn't realized she needed so badly by the time the car was running again. Dusk had fallen. The lights from the grocery store cast long shadows across the asphalt. And Emma realized she hadn't once thought about hurrying home. Daniel stepped back, wiping his hands. "Good as new," he said, but it wasn't just the car that felt repaired. Emma hesitated, unsure why she wanted to prolong the moment. "Thanks, Daniel. Not just for this. For stopping. Being here." He looked at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I think sometimes we all need someone to show up at the right time." Weeks passed, and Daniel's presence became a quiet part of Emma's life. He would stop by under the guise of fixing small things her car. A broken fence, a leaky faucet, but each visit carried a subtle emotional weight. They shared more than just repairs. They shared pieces of themselves. Emma began to look forward to his visits, to the easy conversation that seemed to fill the empty spaces in her days. One evening, she invited him to sit on her porch. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink, and the air smelled faintly of autumn leaves. For a long time, they didn't speak, simply watched the world settle around them. Finally, Emma broke the silence. "I didn't realize how lonely I felt," she admitted softly, "until things started to feel steady again." Daniel didn't answer immediately. He just turned to her, eyes steady, thoughtful. "Some things don't need fixing," he said finally. "They just need time. And someone who stays." The words hit her harder than she expected. Emma had spent years trying to fix herself, to make sense of a life that seemed scattered. And here was someone who didn't try to change her, didn't rush her, didn't demand anything except her presence. They continued to meet, their connection growing slowly, naturally. It wasn't about passion or urgency. It was about understanding, about quiet moments that carried meaning. Walks along the quiet streets, coffee on Sunday mornings, conversations that lasted until the stars were bright overhead. These moments began to stitch the fractures in Emma's heart back together. One night, as they walked together after fixing a neighbor's mailbox, Emma realized she trusted him in a way she hadn't trusted anyone in years. She felt comfortable in his silence, valued in his attention, seen in his understanding. The thought surprised her. She hadn't expected to let someone back into her life, let alone in such a simple, effortless way. Another evening, her car broke down again, this time in her own driveway. She sighed, preparing herself for yet another solo struggle, but Daniel appeared before she could call. "Hey, looks like we're doing this again," he said with that familiar calm. Emma laughed softly. "You're like my car guardian angel," he smiled. "I guess I am." As he worked, Emma watched him move with quiet confidence. She thought about how much had changed since that first night on Maple Street the car had been fixed. Yes, but more importantly, something inside her had shifted. She felt a cautious hope, a gentle optimism that life could be kind again. Finally, he stepped back, wiping his hands. "Good to go," he said. But Emma knew it wasn't just the car. Something inside her had started to run smoothly again. 2. They stood together under the soft glow of the porch light, neither rushing, neither needing to speak. Words weren't necessary. The silence between them was comfortable, meaningful. Emma felt her chest tighten, not with anxiety, but with anticipation. She wanted this connection to continue, wanted to see where it might lead. Daniel looked at her, and for the first time, Emma noticed a vulnerability beneath his calm exterior. "I'm not in a hurry," he said quietly, "but I don't want to ignore this. Whatever this is between us." Emma's heart beat faster, steady and sure. "I feel the same," she whispered. They didn't kiss, didn't make promises. There was no need. The acknowledgement, the quiet agreement was enough. The trust, the understanding, slow building of something real lit was all there. Over the next weeks, their relationship continued to grow without force or rush. Daniel wasn't just fixing things around her house or in her life. He was repairing something Emma hadn't realized was broken: the quiet loneliness, the hesitation to trust again, the doubt that love could ever return after loss. Emma began to embrace small joys again. The scent of fresh coffee in the morning, the sound of leaves rustling outside her window, the feeling of her car starting smoothly, all seemed brighter, more vibrant. Daniel's presence had become a part of her daily life, not as a necessity but as a gift, as a reminder that life could still surprise her with unexpected kindness and understanding. Then, one evening, after a particularly long day, they sat on her porch again, watching the sunset. The air was cool, carrying the scent of the approaching fall. Emma leaned back, feeling a rare sense of calm. Daniel turned to her and said, "You know, I think life has a funny way of fixing what we didn't even know was broken." Emma smiled, a genuine, full smile. She realized he was right. The car, the small repairs, the moments of laughter and conversation, it wasn't just about keeping life running smoothly. It was about healing, about connection, about rediscovering hope in the most unexpected way. From that night on, Emma stopped thinking about the past with regret and started imagining a future she could look forward to. She wasn't rushing anything, wasn't forcing any outcomes. She simply let the bond between her and Daniel grow naturally, appreciating each moment as it came. Even when the car broke again or life threw unexpected challenges, Emma no longer felt trapped. Daniel's steady presence reminded her that she could face difficulties with patience and trust. Their relationship wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about small acts of care, shared understanding, and a quiet commitment to being there for each other, and for the first time in a long time, Emma felt ready to embrace the journey ahead. The road didn't seem so lonely anymore. With Daniel by her side, the bumps and breakdowns felt manageable, even meaningful. He hadn't just fixed her car. He had reminded her that life could start again, gently, quietly. Beautifully dot, under the soft glow of the evening, Emma realized that love didn't always arrive with fireworks or urgency. Sometimes it came slowly with steady hands and patient hearts, fixing the quiet cracks in life that we often ignore until someone arrives to notice them, and in that quiet, unassuming way, Emma and Daniel began something real, something neither of them had expected but both had needed all along. The car would break again. Life would challenge them. But they had found something stronger: trust, companionship, and a gentle love that grew with every shared moment, proving that some repairs go far beyond what the eye can see.